3,400 miles per hour. Before the first booster has even cleared the deck of the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, a second missile follows, then a third, then a fourth. Within 60 seconds, the horizon is now a grid of white smoke trails. There are 400 incoming tracks, 400 vampires screaming across the sea, closing the distance from 150 miles to zero at supersonic speeds. This is the moment the U.S. Navy was built for. But as the computer-controlled interceptors find their marks begin to rain, burning titanium, a question begins to circulate through the fleet. Where did China get this many missiles? And why are they all moving exactly the same way? The tactical action officer watches as the Aegis system, the most sophisticated naval brain on the planet, prioritizes the threats. The SM-2 Block 3C missiles are the first to work, reaching out 100 miles to swat the lead attackers out of the air. From the flight deck of the USS Ronald Reagan, the view is breathtaking. Every few seconds, an orange flash illuminates the distant clouds. Those are the hits. Each flash represents a hostile threat neutralized. Our destroyers are doing exactly what they were designed to do. They are acting as an impenetrable shield. The enemy is throwing everything they have at us, or so it seems. Never in history has a fleet been forced to intercept this many targets at once, but we are winning. For every SM-6 we put in the air, a hostile track vanishes from the screen. We are proving that the South China Sea doesn't belong to the force with the most land, it belongs to the force with the best technology. The evolved Sea Sparrow missile begins to fire, now handling the leakers that manage to slip past the long-range screen. These missiles are shorter, faster, and designed for the knife fight. They spiral into the sky, pulling 50 Gs to intercept targets only 20 miles out. We are winning so decisively that it almost feels too easy. By the 20-minute mark, the initial swarm of 400 has been whittled down to 50. But then the fire control man on the lead destroyer narrows his eyes. He's looking at the debris patterns on his high-resolution optics. He's looking at the way the targets are falling, and his blood begins to run cold. The realization doesn't come with a bang. It comes with a whisper. On the infrared cameras, the falling debris isn't glowing with the white-hot intensity of a liquid-fueled jet engine. It's cooling too fast. It's fluttering in the wind like paper. It isn't a wing from a J-20 stealth fighter. It isn't the fuselage of a YJ-12 supersonic missile. It's a frame made of cheap industrial-grade plywood, wrapped in a thin layer of radar-reflective foil. The bridge goes silent. The vampires we've been shooting at for the last 30 minutes weren't missiles. They were saturation echo drones, cheap $20,000 fiberglass shells equipped with Lundberg lenses, small devices that make a drone look like a heavy bomber on a radar screen. Beijing didn't send a strike package, they sent a garage sale. The math of the engagement begins to rewrite itself in the most terrifying way possible. But we weren't killing an enemy fleet, we were shooting at trash. Every time a SM-6 left its cell, that was $5 million gone. Every ESSM was another $2 million. The Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, the most powerful surface combatants in the world, have just spent their entire long-range magazine on plywood and balloons. We have the best radar, the best computers, and the best sailors in the world, and we are currently sitting in the middle of a hostile sea with no bullets left in the gun. 4 distinct radar signatures bloom on the edge of the sensor range. They aren't drones. They are moving at a steady 30 knots, emerging from the radar shadows of a nearby island chain. These are the Type 055 Renhai-class guided missile cruisers, Beijing's heavy hitters. Each one carries 112 vertical launch cells. And unlike us, their magazines are full. They knew that the U.S. Navy has a critical weakness. We cannot reload our VLS cells at sea. To get more SM-6 missiles, these destroyers have to sail all the way back to Guam or Japan. That's a 3-day journey. We don't have 3 days, we don't have 3 minutes. The Type 055s turn their bows toward the carrier strike group. On the radar, a new set of tracks appears. These are YJ-21 hypersonic missiles. They are climbing into the near-space atmosphere before arching down toward our fleet at Mach 6 over 4,600 miles per hour. At that speed, it screams through the atmosphere like a falling star. We have no SM-6 missiles left to meet them at high altitude. We have no SM-2s to thin the herd. The realization that all our technology, all our billions of dollars, and all our training can be neutralized by a simple low-tech trick. We are the most powerful Navy in history, and we are about to be sunk by plywood. We know many of you watching have stood on these very decks. You've felt the heat of a VLS launch, and you've seen the precision of the Aegis system firsthand. You know better than anyone that a ship is only as dangerous as the magazines it carries. To the veterans of the VLS reload crews and the gunners' mates who keep our fleet ready, we see you. If you've ever been part of a missile exercise or a real-world engagement where every shot counted, share your story in the comments. The alarm for a Vampire inbound is different this time. It's a death knell. The YJ-21 missiles are 5 minutes out, then 4, then 3. The idea of using a 5-inch gun to stop a Mach 6 missile is insane. It's like trying to stop a bullet with a fly swatter, but it's all we have left. The Arleigh Burke-class destroyers begin to maneuver aggressively, turning their broadsides toward the threat to clear the firing arcs for their Mark 45 5-inch guns. They are controlled by the same Aegis computer, but their range is pathetic compared to the missiles we just wasted. We have to wait until the enemy is within 10 miles. 10 miles at Mach 6 is less than 10 seconds of flight time. On the flight deck of the carrier, the suicide scramble begins. F/A-18E Super Hornets are catapulted into the air with their engines screaming in afterburner. They use those up defending the fleet from the drone swarm. They are flying with their M61A2 Vulcan cannons. The pilots are being told to fly directly into the path of the incoming hypersonics and hold down the trigger. It is a desperate, bloody gamble. The first YJ-21 hits the terminal phase. The Phalanx CIWS on the nearest destroyer erupts. The 20mm Gatling gun fires 4,500 rounds per minute, creating a literal wall of tungsten in the air. The lead missile slams into the wall of lead and shatters its energy, carrying the fragments into the ocean. But there are 20 more behind it. One of the Type 055 cruisers fires another volley. They know we are down to our last line of defense. And then the unthinkable happens. A YJ-21 slips through. It's moving too fast for the CIWS to track. It misses the destroyer, but finds the carrier. It hits the side of the hull just above the waterline. The impact isn't like a normal explosion. At Mach 6, a missile doesn't need a warhead to do damage. The USS Ronald Reagan shudders. A hole the size of a 2-car garage is torn into the side of the Pride of the Pacific. The invincible American carrier is no longer invincible. It is listing 5 degrees to starboard. It is smoking, and the enemy is just getting started. The American response is not one of retreat. It is one of fury. The destroyer nearest to the carrier, its VLS, cells empty, and its gun barrel smoking, makes a choice. The ship launches its RUM-139 vertical launch anti-submarine rocket. This weapon was never meant to hit a surface ship, let alone a missile. It carries a Mark 54 torpedo, but the crew isn't using it for the torpedo. They program the rocket to detonate its fuel load and its delivery charge 500 feet above the water, directly in the path of the next incoming volley. The incoming hypersonic missiles, blinded by the sudden thermal bloom and the physical interference, lose their radar locks. 3 of them veer off course and splash harmlessly into the sea. On the deck of the carrier, despite the smoke and the list, the yellow shirts are still launching planes. The F/A-18E Super Hornets are now acting as human shields. The explosion is blinding. The jet and the missile vanish in a ball of fire. This is the grit of the U.S. Navy. This is what Beijing didn't account for. They calculated our missile counts, but they didn't calculate the lengths an American sailor will go to when their ship is threatened. The Arleigh Burke-class destroyers are now within range of the Type 055 cruisers. We don't have missiles, but we have 5-inch guns, and we have Harpoon missiles that were kept in separate canister-launched racks. The order is given: fire everything. The Harpoon missiles, old and slow compared to the Chinese hypersonics, skim the waves at 500 miles per hour. They don't have the flash of the new tech, but they have a 500-pound warhead that doesn't care about how much plywood the enemy has. The lead Type 055 takes 2 hits to its superstructure. The bridge is vaporized. The Chinese cruiser, which thought it was coming in for a mop-up operation against a defenseless fleet, is suddenly a burning wreck. The math has changed again. It's no longer a high-tech standoff. It's a brawl. And in a brawl, the U.S. Navy is the meanest fighter in the ocean. By the time the sun begins to set over the South China Sea, the firing has stopped. The ocean is covered in a thick layer of oil and debris, some of it plywood, some of it high-grade military aluminum. The USS Ronald Reagan is still afloat. Its damage control teams have plugged the hole and stabilized the list. It is limping, her flight deck scarred and her hull blackened, but it is still in American sovereign territory. The Chinese fleet has retreated. They lost 2 of their prized Type 055 cruisers and dozens of smaller support craft. They expected to find an empty magazine and an easy victory. Instead, they found a fleet that was willing to fight with its bare knuckles. But the victory feels hollow. We survived, but the cost was astronomical. We used $3 billion in interceptors to kill $5 million in drones. We lost one of our best pilots. One of our carriers will be in dry dock for a year. The world watched as the most advanced navy on Earth was nearly brought to its knees by a math problem. Beijing proved that they don't have to be better than us, they just have to be cheaper. They proved that our greatest strength, our reliance on ultra-high-tech limited quantity missiles, is also our greatest vulnerability. The message is clear. The next war won't be won by the side with the best computer. It will be won by the side that can stay in the fight after the computers go dark and the magazines go empty. Now here's the question that should keep every strategist in Washington awake at night. What if the US Navy hadn't canceled the Reload at Sea program back in the 1990s? During the Cold War, we experimented with heavy cranes that could move a 3-ton SM-2 missile from a supply ship to a destroyer's VLS cell while moving at 15 knots in open water. We abandoned the tech because it was too expensive and too dangerous for peacetime operations. But imagine the Ghost Raid ended, the supply ships would have already been alongside our destroyers. The VLS cells would have been refilled in 30 minutes. When those Type 055 cruisers emerged from the islands, they wouldn't have found a defenseless target. They would have found a fleet with a fresh rack of 500 missiles ready to go. One engineering decision made 30 years ago nearly cost us a carrier today. What happens if we don't fix it before the next swarm arrives? Think about that. Disclaimer, we respect the truth, and this video is our way of dramatizing a real event to give the audience a detailed look. However, some elements in this video also present a hypothetical scenario and are not a factual report of real events. All events, dialogues, and character emotions depicted are fictional based on publicly available information about real-world military capabilities and geopolitical tensions. Thank you.